Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio, radio, no pictures live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you're driving along in your car or your truck or on public transport. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the as far as I can tell, the vast difference between deportations from the Western First World, deportations, and the difference between white people being deported and brown and black people being deported. There seems to be an almost exact difference. The success rate for governments wanting to deport white people is very high. I mean, it seems to be around 98% as best I can work out. And yet when they want to deport seriously criminal black and brown people, then it's the complete reverse. Only 2 or 3% are successful in deportations. And there's a number of sort of differences here. Firstly, the government seems to show much more vigor and courage and when they want to deport a white person, particularly if it's a white man. But when it's a brown person or brown-black person, or particularly brown and black women, and so then suddenly the government seems to lose all its resolve. Very, very half-hearted attempts at deportation. Similarly, there are differences in if a white person's about to be deported, it doesn't matter whether they're penniless or not, they find it very hard to get any legal support or legal aid or free legal advice and support. Whereas if you're a illiterate brown and black peasant to be deported, it doesn't matter how many crimes you've committed. You can, multiple murders or something, it doesn't matter. There will be an army, a veritable army of NGO, all for free, NGO lawyers, and they seem to have an uncanny, incredible ability to be able to have the cases heard, the deportation cases heard by activist judges in the Western countries, Australia included. I mean, how do they do that? I mean, wow. Whereas, when it's the white guy who's about to be deported, there's a very sober, the rules, the law, and so on. Judges appear. No activist judges seem to appear for that guy. So anyway, there's a few recent cases I'll look at, and I'll sort of go around. There's some from Australia and elsewhere, but the architecture, if you like, of the thing is the same. Now here's one guy. He came to Australia with his folks. I think this was from Britain when he was 12 years old. So so he's a kid. He's not an adult, and he's made no decision in this. He's been, his parents made that decision, and they arrived in Australia in, I think, the early 1980s as migrants from Britain, and I think 7 or 8 years or something like that. He's in his late 40s, or he's like 50 years old at this time, somewhere around there. He gets done for, as I understand it, drug dealing, and gets quite a long sentence. I would think a fairly long sentence in the overall scheme of things. As far as I can tell, he gets no time off for good behaviour or anything like that, suggesting that he maybe wasn't a model prisoner. And the guy doesn't come across, suggesting that he maybe wasn't a model prisoner. And the guy doesn't come across as a model upstanding citizen. So, I'm not advocating on his behalf here, but rather to demonstrate the inconsistency about how white people are treated and how non-white people are treated. Now, he is going to be deported. So even if you've got a visa or, you've got citizenship, it can be revoked because you weren't born in Australia, as I understand it, the law here. And if you serve longer than, I think it's 12 months or around that time, if you serve longer than 12 months in prison, then the immigration department can seek to have your citizenship or visa, as the case may be, revoked. And because some people get lifetime resident visas, for example, so they can then say, well, we're going to deport you. So given that his family, or he was born in Britain, this guy, that's the only place they can deport him to. Now, it turns out he's got several children in Australia, living in Australia. The youngest is still at school. And so his argument is, well, hold on, I've been here since I was a kid, and all my family and relatives are here, ones that are living. And so I don't know anyone in Britain, so my life is here. My children are here, so I should be allowed to stay on that basis. And now, this argument, a right to a family life, that's used very widely when it comes to preventing the deportation of brown and black people. Well, look, his children live in the West. His children live in Australia or Britain or wherever the thing is. So this guy has a right to stay because of the family life. He can't be separated from his children. And they have rights. The children have rights not to be separated from their father and so on. But when it's a white person, I've noticed these rights suddenly just vanish into the ether, and they don't exist anymore. But when it's a brown and black person guilty of much greater crimes, then suddenly it is an issue. And I'm not sure I follow the logic there and why we have two standards of a two-tier system of the law that applies and prevents the brown and black person getting deported suddenly has no power or compulsion at all when it's applied to the white person. It just seems odd that surely it could be applied equally to both white and black. Now, again, I'm not suggesting this white guy's an upstanding citizen. It would suggest otherwise, but nonetheless. Now, another argument put forward is that the person has made a new life. This, apart from family life, has made a new life in the country. They're part of the scene here, and therefore you'd be depriving them of that. And so all the arguments that are used, or pretty much all of them, the final argument is it's too dangerous for Abdul to go back to wherever he came from because they've heard that there might be people who want to kill him or something. That's never proven. It's always bandied around. There's not a whit of evidence or proof to support these things, but they suggest there might be a risk in it. So that's another one that's used. But anyway, so as I understand it, the deportation of this guy is going ahead. Now, when you read in the mainstream media, and there was briefly, just for a few hours, there was an article on one of the websites about this particular guy who's getting deported. The article was minimally sympathetic. It did say, well, if he came over as a kid, so why would you want to deport someone who arrived as a kid? So but that was about the extent of it. Whereas the sympathy in the articles for the brown and black guy who's going to be deported, it gushes sympathy, denounces the government as being fascist, Nazi, if not Hitler personally, and so on and so forth. Staunchly and laced with propaganda, staunchly in favour of the black brown guy, whereas this was very lukewarm, very tepid, in support of the white guy. Just said he came as a kid and he's got children. Bang, that's it. Whereas again, the brown and black guy was very, very. He escaped persecution, evil persecution, and the screaming and the propaganda that goes on for the brown and black guy is very different from the cheer squatting or the zero cheer squatting they do for the white guy. So it looks like that's going ahead. Now, there was another one where a white woman, again, this was Britain, I think, or Ireland maybe, but she was found guilty of some sort of social security fraud or something like that. But she's 75 years old and again came to Australia from Ireland as a child, like, 10, 12 years old, something like that. I mean, why would you bother deporting somebody like that? I mean, you wouldn't. And again, the people from other countries that India and also, they're able to win cases on the flimsiest of excuses and pretexts and made up reasons, such as the family life or their their mental health is so frail, and so on and so forth. But these standards, these same standards of allowance, just aren't applied to white people. I can't understand that. Well, I can. It's part of the wider anti-white sort of conduct you see through the legal and through the political class and the public service class and so on. So they're anti-whiteism. But then we come to the NGOs. Now, why aren't the NGOs flocking around this white guy, making appeal after appeal and lodging appeals left, right, and centre? It's what they do for the illiterate black and brown peasants. This guy actually speaks English, and the white guy speaks English, and he knows his way around. He'd be a better bet to keep, you'd think, in the country than the illiterate third world peasant. But no, instead, this guy is this white guy can't go, or these white people generally, they just can't get anywhere near the sort of legal assistance that the NGOs provide to the black and brown people. Now, these NGOs pass them off as charity to help the underprivileged and so on, but they don't. They're not helping. This white guy's he's penniless. He's got very poor employment prospects. Now he's been in prison, and not that he didn't deserve to go to prison and everything, but again, the black and brown people who also commit drug dealing crimes and murder and gang rape and all sorts of stuff like that. Well, why aren't they treated as in the same way, or given the severity of the crimes they commit? Why aren't they just deported? No, you're not getting any legal aid, buddy. You're out of here. But they don't. And they're able to, again, to claim, well, I've got children in England or Australia or Canada or somewhere, and avoid getting deported. But those exact same arguments aren't used for the white guy. And again, the white guy can't get the legal aid, can't get the support. Now, I look at some of these cases where the NGOs they'll fight for a decade to stop the black brown guy getting deported. And they'll spend over $1 million in legal fees on it. But they're declared as charities because they say, well, we help everybody, but they don't. So in my view, they don't deserve and shouldn't get and should have withdrawn that charity status. If you want to be special boutique globalist, functionary stooges, then you're not going to get a charity status. If you want to have a charity status, that's fine, but you have to help everybody equally. And if you don't, then no more charity status. So, and there was another guy, again a white guy. Again, I think he came over as a child. I think like 5 years old or something from England or Scotland, and he came to with his folks. He came to Australia, and he was at some traffic stop. I think he was stopped for something, and he decided to beat up one of the police officers, and then was arrested. And there was a high-speed chase. There was more punch-ups with the police and so on. So he got 5 years, 3 or 4 years, whatever it was, but more than 12 months in prison, and then they went to deport him. Now, again, you wouldn't point to him as an upstanding citizen, but on the basis that he'd been divorced while he was in prison, it was then claimed that, well, you've been divorced, you weren't seeing your child every day, or your children every day, because he was in prison, for fuck's sake. Therefore, you don't have a family life, therefore we can deport you, and they did. And again, no NGOs or lawyers or activists coming to his assistance. You're out of here, buddy. And yet his crime, he should have served a prison term for that. So again, I'm not claiming an upstanding citizen here necessarily, but the reality is that his crimes were much less severe than many of the black and brown people they tried to deport. But for some reason, no one's looking out for him. He's not getting any free legal representation from NGOs or the legal aid department. So a legal aid department, taxpayer-funded legal aid that will shower money on the black and brown peasant, but not the white guy. So this I find this very concerning. Now, if you look at say from Australia, as I understand it, 1,000 people that have been deported from Australia under legal court orders type thing, withdrawn or had their visas withdrawn and then thus deported. The vast majority, as I understand it, the vast majority of those, by far and away the majority, are white people. Again, people who came as children to Australia, primarily from Britain, but other places too, France and so on, but primarily from Britain. And given they came as children, it wasn't their choice to come. Then I don't know. Is deportation a worthwhile sort of way of dealing with this? And why aren't these rules regarding deportation, why aren't they applied equally to all races and all people? You've been with Tassos today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.